Hey, Durham. Some of you may recall the controversial rezoning and annexation in Southeast Durham called the Virgil Road Assemblage. The Planning Commission denied this case 10 to 0. So, why is it controversial? Durham Planning Commissioner Tony Cease resigned, citing concerns that the commission's work is dismissed, denigrated, and at times ignored by Durham's City Council. In this article, Mr. Cease's resignation letter is shared, where he describes the Virgil Road project as possibly the most egregious example of a council vote against the tenets of the newly adopted comprehensive plan. There are a lot of steep slopes. One slope is 150 feet high, more suitable for a roller coaster. Of course, there will be dynamite blasting, which has had a history of destroying local wells and houses with absolutely no accountability from the developers or blasters. If your house or well gets damaged by development in Durham, too bad. There are also citizens dealing with flooding on their property because of so much development and nowhere for the stormwater to go. Triassic Basin soils are highly erosive, and mass grading continues to contribute to sediment pollution and runoff into the creeks and streams. In fact, the Southern Environmental Law Center is suing a developer in federal court for violating the Clean Water Act in a development in Southeast Durham. Organizations like Preserve Rural Durham and Sound Rivers have been calling for more environmentally responsible development, and the Virgil Road Assemblage doesn't seem to be one of them. And while 3 members of City Council understand the damage and strain from irresponsible development, the majority 4 City Council members continue to pass poorly planned developments. Some of you were surprised to hear City Councilman Carl Rist support this development. According to Rist, forests are one of the major contributors of nitrogen.
56% of nitrogen that gets in Falls Lake comes from forest and agriculture. 1% of nitrogen comes from stream bank erosion, 1%. For phosphorus, the other nutrient we measure closely, 54% comes from forest and agriculture. 14% comes from stream bank erosion. So I think we have to be clear about what the impacts are in Falls Lake. And I think the data shows that there is some erosion. This happens, as the owners have said, but much more is coming from forested land and agriculture.
Agriculture was mentioned too, but there aren't too many farms in Durham these days. A Durham citizen named Katie Ross wrote Councilman Rist expressing her disappointment regarding his fake science. Councilman Rist responded by citing Michelle Wolfick's UNRBA presentation at a Durham City Council work session on May 9, 2024.
Councilmember Rist asked about this earlier this year. I just wanted to briefly say that the sources of nutrients going to Falls Lake, that is what we're talking about, Falls Lake, are largely coming from forests for both nitrogen and phosphorus.
Not really sure why Ms. Wolfick blamed forests for the pollution. Also, not sure why Wolfick is using old data from 2015 to 2018, even though there's much more recent data from the UNC Collaboratory and Dr. Burkholder. Could it be that she wants to use data before the explosion of development after the Lick Creek Regional Sewage Pumping Station was built? Could it be that Wolfick is representing the Upper Neuse River Basin Association, which is in favor of site-specific standards, instead of abiding by the Falls Lake rules? Let me explain. Around 2010, there were many Falls Lake stakeholder meetings attended by politicians, environmentalists, developers, concerned citizens, and others to discuss what to do about the pollution in Falls Lake. WRAL News in Raleigh reports.
More than 400,000 people count on the lake for drinking water, but the lake is polluted. WRL's Dan Bowens reports a plan is underway to get it healthy and clean.
Falls Lake is the drinking source for more than 400,000 Wake County residents, so it may be surprising to hear a state senator say this.
It concerns me to no end that we have the largest, most polluted drinking water source in the whole state in Falls Lake.
Algae and sediment collecting in sections here have made this the most polluted water source in the entire state. State leaders say a plan to clean it all up must be in place by January of 2011.
And I think we need to be as candid with ourselves and our citizens as possible, and that is the current rules aren't working.
The city of Raleigh wants strict guidelines specifically focusing on septic tanks, discharges, and tougher development standards north of the lake in Durham and Granville counties.
Unless we all change our practices to the best level of technology, we really don't have a chance to improve the quality of the lake. And the sooner we can do that and all get on board to do that, then the better off we will be.
But those changes could be a difficult sell. Durham is on the record saying January of 2011 is too soon to expect to have a plan in place.
I think that what we have to do is balance.
Senator Stein says everyone agrees there is a problem. Fixing that problem, though, he says, is still a work in process.
They're hearing from Durham, they're hearing from Granville, they're hearing from Wake and Raleigh, and they're going to come up with rules that get the job done, but do it in a way that's actually reasonable.
Dan Bones, WRL News, Wake County.
As you may have guessed, the upstream polluters of Falls Lake, who do not drink Falls Lake water and have no benefit, did not want to pay the cost for polluting the lake or change their land development practices. Durham was already having issues with sediment control violations and algae overgrowth, so they definitely did not want to pay the estimated $1.3 billion cleanup. Plus, Durham had plans to build a large regional sewage pumping station in southeast Durham that would accommodate over 10,000 acres of development in the water supply watershed of Falls Lake. Durham hired attorney Steve Levitas, the former deputy secretary of Diener, to help fight the Falls Lake rules. You see, sometimes people will leave their state job and work for industry because they are well connected and know all the loopholes. By the way, Levitas was paid with stormwater fees, probably illegal since those fees are for improving water quality, not for hiring attorneys to fight water quality standards. So here's what happened. Falls Lake was divided into two parts, the upper part and the lower part. The lower part of the lake is near Wake County, and it's the cleanest part of the lake, and they have to clean up their part first. Then in 10 years, there would be a reevaluation to see if the upper part of the lake near Durham would have to clean up at all. The 10 years for reevaluation was a delay tactic on Durham's part because Durham had plans to build out southeast Durham and the Falls Lake watershed. Durham had to plan ahead if they were going to get out of the Falls Lake rules. Durham became very involved with the Upper Neuse River Basin Association, otherwise known as UNRBA. UNRBA found a new executive director who had a long history of lobbying for the lowest common denominator when it came to water quality standards. He's well connected and paid very well, in fact, much more than the previous executive directors who were more environmentally conscientious. And the strange thing is that he doesn't even live close to this area. It's almost like he was handpicked for the job. So, what is UNRBA promoting? Site-specific standards. And if you don't know what that means, I'll tell you. Johnny and Susie are told to clean their rooms. Susie cleans her room, and Johnny says, "My room is naturally messy and can never be clean, so I won't even try. I would like site-specific standards for my room, or the lake, if you get my drift." Greensboro and Durham hired Steve Levitas to weaken the Jordan Lake rules. No one ever abided by the Jordan Lake rules, and do you think Durham will abide by the Falls Lake rules? Not if they can help it. It is much less expensive to pay millions to thwart the rules than billions to abide by the rules because you can't or won't curtail current development practices. So, if Michelle Wolfick is representing UNRBA and influencing Durham City Council members in favor of developers, forests are a problem. But if she's representing City of Durham, then she knows that forests are actually helpful. In fact, forests are very beneficial.
How much does development contribute toward contaminating the watershed?
Obviously, the best that can happen in a watershed is for it to be old growth forests, which is almost impossible in North Carolina because the entire state has been logged. So the best we can do is forest. And then anything other than forest is a departure from the best that can happen in a watershed.
According to Samantha Kropp, unfortunately, Councilman Riss left out one key part of the picture Sound Rivers wrote. Forests perform a key role in water filtration. In fact, according to the University of North Carolina's Falls Lake study, forests are responsible for filtering out 81% of nutrients that would otherwise make their way into the lake. The science agrees that one of the most effective strategies for protecting water quality and drinking water use at Falls Lake is to protect the remaining forest areas in the watershed. Hopefully, this gives you some insights as to why forests have been blamed for excess nitrogen instead of the real culprits. I suspect it's very difficult to work for the city of Durham and navigate what you know versus what you were supposed to say to benefit the developers. And UNRBA, if you are using data before 2018, it looks like you are cherry picking data because a lot of development has happened in the water supply watershed of Falls Lake in Durham since 2018. And you have more recent data. Thank you so much for watching.